Everybody make it in here okay?
I think so. Oh, let me make sure. Yeah, I'm unmuted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we were the group that might have been missing one. I heard from Daryl Moss. Unfortunately, I don't know if he made it in. DeQuasia, do you see him in any of the groups?
Nope, I don't see him in my attendees list, but I do see a Jonelle.
Oh, okay. Janelle, yeah, she should be admitted. Daryl, unfortunately, he might have gone to the room because right at about 5:01, my phone was ringing as if he, was wondering where we all were. I'm not sure. If you could just keep an eye out for him in the waiting room, that'd be cool.
I got it.
Okay. So this is our group here. We have, like I said, 8 of us. I want to introduce Mark Hamlet. Mark is the utility director with SIGWASA, South Granville Water and Sewer Authority. So Mark is willing to come and talk to us a little bit today about the future of SIGWASA and where it's going from here. I know that it's a crucial component of our long-term outlook here in Creedmoor, and Mark's part of the answer. And I like to phrase it that way because SIGWASA is always the question, and Mark is part of the answer, and that's a good thing. So, Mark, thank you for coming and being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. As Mike said, my name is Mark Hamlet. I am the Mike said utility director. I'm the utility engineer. Little background. That's okay. I'm a licensed professional engineer. Been in the engineering field for almost 20 years. I've been with SIGWASA since August of last year. Up until that point, SIGWASA did not have a dedicated engineer on staff. For its entire existence, the director, the past director, was also a licensed engineer. So he was trying to be the director and engineer at the same time, which is a monumental task. The current director, Scott Schroyer, saw the need to have a dedicated engineer on staff to help with the questions that Mike was saying and the utility problems for the future. So like I said, last August, I came on board as the utility engineer and really started digging into the infrastructure that we have across our service area. As you know, with the utilities, we provide the water and sewer. As we started digging into that, I started finding problems across the board in both. I know that there's issues in Creedmoor, Butner, and STEM, but there are specific issues that face the Creedmoor service area. So I'm going to talk about some of those problems tonight, and also talk about what we are doing to help in that regard, and that is with both water and sewer. So I will start with the sewer, and to give a summary of the problems that we face with the sewer serving Creedmoor. Basically, everything in the Creedmoor and Wilton area flows through one single lift station. It's the Joe P lift station, which is at the intersection of Joe P Road and 15 coming into the southern side of Creedmoor. Everything funnels into that lift station, and that lift station is undersized. It's basically at capacity right now. As soon as we found that was the case, we basically stopped granting allocations for residential and commercial development. So any builder that wants to build a large subdivision, any commercial development, we have not been granting allocations to that because we are over capacity. Even if I wanted to grant the allocation, we could not, because of any sewer permitting will also have to go to the state, and they would deny the permit. So we knew that this was a problem. So we wanted to start on a path to try to find a solution and figure out how to make improvements, identify the improvements, and figure out what we can do to solve the sewer capacity issues. So back in 2018, this is before I arrived at SIGWASA, they hired a consultant out of Durham to do a master plan study. Ultimately, they identified 4 problem areas that face the SIGWASA sewer network. There were 2 large gravity interceptor lines. and then the two primary lift stations that were causing problems. One of those was the Joe P lift station that I was just speaking of. Another was the East Middleton lift station. About a year ago, we put out an RFP, RFQ, and end up ultimately selecting CDM Smith, which is a large consulting firm that does a lot of water and sewer work. We hired them to first do additional modeling and alternatives analysis, and really zero in on what kind of sewer improvements that we could do. After about 10 months of modeling effort, we came up with a plan, and I'll share my screen in just a second. But we identified 5 different alternatives to solve the sewer concerns that we have. All of these would really help Creedmoor. And the one that was selected, presented to our board, and ultimately approved to go to the next step was the 5th alternative. And I will go ahead and share my screen now.
Jaquisha, can you let him do that? Be like a co-host or whatever?
Let's see.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, so I've got several slides here that these are slides from a presentation that our consultant CDM Smith gave to our board back at the November meeting. So I'll just kind of run through a few of these briefly and then ultimately get to the alternative. But this slide just shows an overall area of the model, the area that we looked at, the lift stations that were modeled. On the bottom left, that triangle is where our wastewater treatment plant is. All these squares, the green and blue squares, are lift stations, primary lift stations that were used in the model. And the blue and the black lines are main gravity interceptor lines that were included in the model. There's really not a lot to go into in this, not a lot of detail, but just to kind of show you the entire area. We were looking at the whole service area with this. So in developing our future model, we obviously have problems today with capacity. We can't serve even the development that wants to happen today and within the next year. But we also want to plan for future growth. So we worked closely with Mike. We looked at your future land use plans, what you anticipate future growth being. And we have projections that reached out to about 2045. You can see here, this is a map of the area that we looked at for the sewer model with the different types of uses here. This was developed, like I said, with Mike's help. So Mike, we definitely appreciate that. But this future build out is what was used for us to determine what kind of sewer flows that we will have by 2045, and allowed us to plan for future growth, for that future growth with our solution. This is just a summary of the alternative number 5, but really what I'll do is I'll go to this next slide. This shows the solution that was ultimately presented to our board and approved. And I say approved, we were given authority to work with CDM Smith to develop a scope and fee proposal to design and permit this. We don't have official approval yet to proceed to that design, but we are working to develop the proposal right now. So I'll try to summarize what we've got here briefly. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in and I'll try to answer what I can. But this project is it's a couple parts. The brown line that goes through Butner, we call that the northern interceptor. That is a portion of our northern interceptor gravity line. That really does not impact Creedmoor, but that is a very undersized sewer line that is going to be upsized. The portion that is going to affect Creedmoor is basically the rest of what you see here, the red and orange lines. So you can see on I guess you can see my cursor. Where my cursor is, that's the Joe P lift station. We're basically going to be constructing a brand new Joe P lift station and shutting down the existing lift station. We're going to be building a new East Middleton lift station. And these two will tie together. This red line that you see here is going to be a new force main that runs from the Joe P lift station, and ultimately it will go west and ultimately go under I-85. We are going to have to bore under that. That's going to be a large expense, very difficult task, but that's a requirement for the project. But the East Middleton lift station, this line that you see here, this is a new force main from that lift station, it will tie into the primary force main coming from Joe P. We're also going to build a new lift station here, which right now we're just calling it the I-85 lift station. We currently have a gravity line that runs under I-85 here. What we would like to do is to eliminate that, just so that we never have to cross the interstate again. It's very expensive, very difficult to permit. So we're going to pick up the flow here and pump it south in a new force main to tie into the Joe P primary force main as well. We're going to have to install some additional gravity line. That's what this orange or yellow, whatever color this is, this orangish line here. That's going to be new gravity line that will pick up the flow. So all of this infrastructure that you see here is based on the growth from the 2045. This is from the drawing, or for the slide I showed a couple of slides ago that showed the different areas that we worked on with Mike, just the long-term projections. All this infrastructure that you see here is being designed to accommodate that growth. The next slide here just shows you an overall estimate, cost estimate for the different alternatives. I'm not getting into all the different alternatives. I don't think we need to do that. But number 5 is the one that was selected, and we're looking at about $52 million for that. So that's a summary of the project. I'll just leave this screen here. As far as the schedule for this and funding, as I said, it's about a $52 million project. If you may be aware, you may not be aware, but in the recently passed state budget, Seguasa was granted $35 million of infrastructure funds. That money can be used on infrastructure improvement projects. That's what it is designated for. That's the only thing it can be used for. Our current plan is to use that $35 million towards this $50 million. We are also currently in talks with Division of Water Infrastructure about some of their funds to fill the last $15 million gap. We're also talking to USDA about some of their funds, and we're exploring other options as well. But the fact that we have 35 of the $50 million is very positive, and I feel like this is a project that should and will happen. As far as schedule goes for this, we are looking at presenting the design proposal to our board in January. Assuming that we get approved at that point, we'll get under contract with our consultant. I believe that we are 12 to 18 months of design and permitting for this project. The brown northern interceptor line that's on the slide here, that's not very complicated to permit. We think that portion would be more in the 12-month time frame, but most of the part that affects Creedmoor with the new lift stations and ultimately boring a sewer line under the interstate, we're thinking that's probably going to push the 18-month time frame. So we're looking at 12 to 18 months for design and permitting. We then go to bid, and we're thinking 18 to 24 months for construction of this project. So you're looking at 3 to 4 years roughly time frame for this project to get complete. So unfortunately, the bad news, over the next 3 to 4 years while that is happening, no large development can occur. No new large development will be allowed because our infrastructure can't handle it. But when this project is complete, then we do not see any issue granting allocations for sewer. So I think at that point, the development can really pick up and take off in the area in regards to the sewer. So that's the sewer. That's the plans for the sewer affecting Creedmoor. And before I get into the water side of things, I'll be happy to take any questions or comments that anybody has.
So Mark, I definitely want to jump in and try to help folks along to understand what it is they're looking at here. This is a proposed plan. This is alternative 5. This is the plan that Seguasa has chosen. And how firm are these routes? Like, is the red line and the brown, is that really where those are going to be?
This is a preliminary layout. It's close. We do expect some of those lines to shift some. The location of those force mains, or excuse me, the lift stations They may shift a little bit, but the lines themselves could shift based on if they have to cross private property, if we have to get easements, can we get those easements? If there's environmental concerns, if there's other utility conflicts in the way, some of those lines may have to shift slightly. But in general, I think this is pretty close, but I would expect it to shift a little bit as we move through the design. But this should be a pretty close assumption of what we're going to end up building.
And what's interesting in that regard to me is that really none of that is connectable. Let's say if I'm a developer, I'm not able to connect to that red line, right? In most cases, I got to find a manhole or some other means of finding a gravity point. So that's not really development related. This is more about system related, right?
Right. And there is a pretty extensive gravity sewer network that runs throughout Creedmoor. So those lines are not shown on this drawing, but any development in the immediate area of Creedmoor should have a gravity line that's not too far from them. And ultimately, all the gravity lines in Creedmoor go through that Joe P lift station. So, and there are ways you can tie to, if somebody builds a lift station on their property, you can tie into another force main, but that gets to be pretty complicated in terms of calculations and cost.
And in fact, there's actually a minimum, right? Do you know? I know this is a tough question. I don't want to ask off the top of your head if you can't answer, but somebody recently had asked me, hey, if I want to build my own lift station to start my subdivision, what is the minimum number of units that you would allow for a new lift station? Is it like a great big number? Is it like 1,000 units or is it like 100?
So I was asked this question recently, and I do not remember the answer from our specs, but I want to say it was somewhere between 150 and 200 units to get a public lift station. So if somebody built a 75 unit subdivision and they had to build a pump station to serve that, it could not be turned over to us. It would have to be a private lift station that the HOA would own and maintain. So it's got to be large enough and serve enough units before it can be considered a public lift station that we would take over and maintain.
Okay, Mike, before you go, Ernie had a question.
Please, Ernie, go ahead.
I've got several, actually. I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. The pipe with the dash lines through it, that's all new pipe. Is that correct?
Everything here is new pipe. Well, are you talking about this line?
Yeah, so that one and the one coming down from I-85.
Yes,
and
yes.
the little loop.
All the thick highlighted lines here are new lines.
Okay. So the one coming out of where it says Joe P booster going to Joe P, that's new line too.
Yes, that's a that's a gravity line that just picks up. So this force main will pump down to a point, and then the gravity line from where it discharges down to the East Middleton lift station will need to be replaced. There's a gravity line that's there now, but it's going to have to be upsized.
Okay. And the peak hour flow over there, is that the current or proposed flow for each section?
That's the flow projected for 2045.
Okay. All right.
And Mark, what does our wastewater treatment plant handle 21.6 MGD now?
Not at this current time.
Not at this current time.
I think we're at 7.5 or 9 million between the water plant and the wastewater plant. But we do anticipate having some expansion in the future. But right now we've got capacity for the immediate growth for the next 10 years. But beyond that, I do expect some upgrades to occur.
That's a lot of millions of gallons of wastewater. I mean, I don't even think, do we, well, I don't know the number. What do we treat now? Could you give a guess on what the total is?
Between 2 and 2.5.
Okay. That's a lot of growth. That's a lot of room for growth in there. If we're only doing 2.5 now with all these other millions, that's great. That could push Creedmoor, over 10,000 persons, probably more than that, I'm sure. Cool. Others have questions?
I just have a quick question. I know you don't have time to kind of go over the other alternatives, but why was this one chosen as opposed to the other? Can you just kind of give a quick summary?
So one of the options, so building this I-85 lift station, and this lift station takes all the flow in this area and it intercepts it. All that flow currently, it flows under I-85 and ties into this gravity line. If we did not put this I-85 lift station here, we would very likely need to upsize all of the gravity line from this point all the way around to the treatment plant. So by intercepting the flow here, we can minimize the improvements that need to be made on this northern interceptor line. So there was an alternative where we did not have this lift station here, but it did include upsizing all of this line. We also looked at, you can see here this cache, this square that says cache, and also north side. Looking at a more long range, in a perfect world scenario, we would have turned this cache lift station into a large regional station. Basically everything in Creedmoor, Middleton, this area would have flowed down to this point, and we would have had a main force main that ran from cache under I-85. That cost, I think it's 50 million, and I think that alternative was pushing 80 million. So we were looking at some plans that would give us some better long-term growth, but those costs were just prohibitive. Right now we've got 35 million to spend towards this, so we need to get an additional 15. That's doable. But if we had to go from 35 to 85, that's a lot more difficult. So we had to pick something that we felt was reasonable and feasible, something that we can actually accomplish. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cash Road would be more like the 50-year solution, right, Mark? That would be
Yes.
kind of serving all of South Granville.
I think at some point in the future, I think you will see lift stations in those areas, that somewhere around cache, somewhere around where that north side is shown. Those two, where they say 2019 MP-future, that's from the 2019 master plan that was performed by the consultant. We anticipate that at some point in the future, those lift stations will be built, whether that's through private development or Seguasa expansion. I'm not sure, but as development moves in that direction, those lift stations will be needed at some point.
Very interesting.
Mark?
Very interesting. Oh,
This is Ed Mims. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing very well, and hopefully you are.
Yes, sir.
The question I have, and this is probably more for Mr. Frangos, because I know he knows Lacey Backus and retail strategies. And since
sir.
our focus group is economic development and Main Street downtown, is retail strategies aware of what Mark has shared, and are they developing, I guess, their, if not strategy, but the way forward, incorporating what Mark shared?
Well, no, they're certainly not aware of what Mark has shared just yet. Our relationship with Retail Strategies, for those of you who don't know, Retail Strategies is a firm that the city has engaged to explore economic development expansion by actually reaching out and contacting different commercial ventures, different companies, whether they be franchises, national brands, or other things. And they're trying to, of course, market Creedmoor. One of their problems, of course, has always been, well, even if we landed somebody, we might not be able to grant them allocation and help to site them somewhere in Creedmoor. But at least what we've got here is a time frame. And at least if a company were to come to Creedmoor today and say, I'm interested, we could at least put them on a reasonable time frame to work through their development and permitting with this goal of capacity in mind. But what you're saying, of course, Mark, is the actual capacity where you could connect to the end of the pipe is still 3 to 4 years away. So what
Correct.
Retail Strategies is doing right now, Commissioner Mims, is really just that preliminary type of outreach, that preliminary type of marketing where they're going to make their 30 individual business contacts. And then we're going to hear from those contacts what they think about Creedmoor. If any come to the point that say, well, yeah, I'm interested, let's go. That's when we have to put them on this path of 3 to 4 years would be the time when the actual construction could occur. And hopefully that doesn't kill their interest, but we don't really have another choice beside that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So Mark, you got some more on water? You want to talk a little bit about the other side?
Yes, I can talk more about water as well. So sewer is obviously the big ticket item right now. That's where a lot of money is going, but we are working on the water side as well. So I think everyone knows that there have been water quality complaints in Creedmoor, and that's something that we take seriously, and we want to try to improve that. So we're taking a couple of steps there. So the first part of that is we have contracted, we've got a contract with a consultant right now to develop a hydraulic water model of the Creedmoor service area as far as the water distribution network. So we are working with them now to develop that. The model basically begins at on Highway 56 at Lake Rogers, where our Lake Road booster pump station is. That's where all the water that serves Creedmoor goes through that booster pump, and that's where it's fed. So the model picks up there, and it's going to include the entire Creedmoor service area all the way out to Wilton. So what this model is going to do is going to allow us to not only calculate water pressures, but also water quality. Is going to help us calculate chlorine residuals, which will ultimately help us determine water quality. This is going to help us with our capital improvement plan, identify projects that we can do to help improve the water quality, whether that's if some subdivisions with dead end lines, if they need auto flushers installed, where we can get that water moving to get higher chlorine residuals. This model is going to help us identify those locations. It's also going to help us determine improvements that we can make at that Lake Road booster station, whether we can inject chlorine at that point. What can we do at that location to improve the quality of the water throughout the Creedmoor service area? So that's the water model is one part of that. Another part that we're working on in September of this year, we submitted an AIA grant to the Division of Environmental Quality. An AIA grant, that stands for Asset Inventory Assessment. So we are seeking a $150,000 grant from them to perform that assessment on our distribution system. And what that would do, we would basically get an assessment of a condition assessment of all the water lines in the system. So if we look at the condition of the pipes throughout the Creedmoor service area, now that grant would not just focus on Creedmoor, but that would benefit Creedmoor. We would use that money for the entire service area. But in particular to Creedmoor, we would look at identifying, confirming what all the pipe materials are, the age of the materials, the condition of the pipes, and then use that information along with the hydraulic water model to prioritize projects. Basically, we'd end up prioritizing all of the water lines in the system from 1 through 5, 5 being the highest criticality, 1 being basically a brand new pipe. So we could rank those pipes and then start putting projects together. So those category 5 water lines, we could go ahead and start put a plan in place to get those replaced, put new lines in the ground. So between the water model and the AIA grant, we've got a lot we're working towards right now for the water distribution system. So as soon as we get the results on that, we can fully develop our capital improvement plan and start making a lot of improvements to the water quality in Creedmoor. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing with the water side of it. But I hope you can see that Seguasa is taking both water and sewer for Creedmoor seriously, and we're spending a lot of effort and a lot of money on improving the system. So, with that, I'll be glad to take any additional questions on either the water or the sewer.
Mark, do you have a map for that, or is it about the same as this map?
I don't have, let's see, hold on 1 second. I can share GIS.
Yeah, this one pretty much applies to every water distribution line we have, right? When you talk about the model's got to capture every component.
Yes. So can everybody see my screen, the GIS?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is Lake Rogers. This symbol that you see here, it represents this is where the lake, what we call the Lake Road booster pump. So our hydraulic water model begins at this location. So all these green lines are sewer lines. The blue lines that you see here are the water lines. So we're picking it up here. This is where the model begins. And basically all the blue lines, everywhere you see, I think if you zoom out far enough, I think the lines disappear. And it bogs down when I'm on Zoom. But so we've got water lines that run all the way out to the Wilton area. So basically from this lift station, or excuse me, this water booster pump station here, the model is going to be the entire Creedmoor ETJ in our service area around Creedmoor, all the way out to the Wilton area. So that's where the hydraulic water model, that's where it's focused. We're not working on any other hydraulic water model for the rest of our service area because we wanted to focus this on Creedmoor and get that knocked out first.
So for those of you that might not be aware, one of the bigger problems we've had in Creedmoor are the water quality issues. And one of the solutions that have recently come up are these automatic flushing devices. In the past, we used to kind of have to say, well, we can go out and I guess it's called manually flushing, right, Mark? Where you open the hydrant and essentially you just flush the water into the ditches. I think a lot of folks who go around Creedmoor see that and wonder, why are they wasting water if it's so precious and valuable? But flushing is part of system maintenance, right? Maybe you just give us a second on why you all do that. So
stagnant water results in poor quality water that may have a bad taste, may have a bad odor. And that's an issue with dead end lines. You may not have enough demand on those lines to actually cycle the water and keep a good flow going to keep quality high. So if you see any of our crew, and our crew puts a lot of water on the ground, but in areas where we know that water quality is a concern, we do go out and we do flow the fire hydrants. And by flowing the water through the hydrant, we're cycling water, bringing in, pushing out some of that older stagnant water that may be there and bringing in the more high quality water. And right now it's basically done based on, where we get complaints, where we know there's issues. But the development of this hydraulic water model is going to really help us put a plan in place to, we'll have a designated plan. We'll be able to know that, hey, this area is somewhere we need to flow this, once a week, or this area we need to do once a month. And I think we can really refine a plan to really maximize the quality of the water throughout the system. And in some areas we may find that, we need to install that auto flusher that's going to automatically flush this hydrant on a weekly basis instead of us having to go out and manually do that every week. So if you see our guys with a hydrant opening, that is what we're doing. We're trying to cycle the water and pull in higher quality water.
And that doesn't affect anybody's water bill, right? Nobody's actually paying for that water. I know that's what people worry about. If they see that water flowing on the ground, they're wondering if that's coming out of my meter, or am I going to have to be, responsible for that water? And obviously, no, that's again part of a system maintenance.
Right.
That's just a big question. We always get those calls.
Yeah, no public fire hydrant is going to be behind a water meter. So, unless the water flows through a meter, it's not going to be billed. So that's water that's unbilled water that we're putting on the ground.
Sorry, just to interrupt real quick. We're about at 23 minutes out. So we just want to make sure that we're covering everything.
Oh, we still got 23 minutes to go. Well, we don't have to drag Mark down that road for so long.
We still need to get back to economic development and downtown.
Right, right.
Before we do that, this is Ed Mims. Let me ask Mark, I guess, 2 quick questions. One, what is the earliest you expect to have results from the modeling? One, and second, is there no history available on Creedmoor as far as issues with water that have been addressed? In other words, people have been talking about, water quality for years. When I look at the chart or map and look at all of the lines, do we not have any history that we can refer back to?
So, all right, I'll answer both of those. The history of the water, the quality, yes, we do have records of that. We know where people, when people call and make complaints about that. We also have the water quality survey that's online right now. Any of that is recorded, and we keep records of that. And a lot of the hydrants that we flush right now is based on those complaints. So, if we know that a specific subdivision is experiencing, we've got a lot of water quality complaints from those subdivisions, that's where we'll really go out and target our flowing those hydrants to try to cycle that water. Let's get the stagnant water out and get new or higher quality water in. So, we do base our hydrant flushing on that. But the water model that we're developing right now is really going to help us refine that, put a better program together. As far as the status of the water model, we have been working on that now. We've got a basic model created based on all the water lines. We're about to start the calibration of that. We have to go out probably in January. We'll start in January and doing hydrant pressure tests and flow tests, so we can start getting that information to put into the model. I anticipate in the spring having some preliminary results for that, and I think we'll have a final report by June. Hopefully before, but I think June at the latest. I believe that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Mark, with that model, you actually can program in future development, right? You could predict what a new user, I guess, the impact on the system, or even if it's possible, let's say, to make a development happen.
Yeah, and we're with water modeling and sewer modeling both. They're both going to be living models. We don't work on them one time and that is it. Once we get them created and calibrated and in good shape and start getting results that are true and verifiable, at that point in the future, if someone wants to come in, let's say a builder wants to put a large 500 unit development somewhere in Creedmoor, we can take the demand from that development, plug that into the model to see what impact it has on both water and sewer, for both models. So we can see, what does that demand put on what impact is that on the water quality or the pressures in the lines, or also downstream, downstream lift stations, what's the impact on lift stations in regards to a sewer model. So that both models, once they're developed, they're not going to sit on a shelf and that's the end of it. That's something that we're going to create them, and they'll be updated constantly.
And it's nothing that some public user is going to be able to manipulate. This is all your office and your professional staff getting the results from these models, right? It's
Correct.
Not like GIS where it's going to be online.
No, these models, we would be happy to share results, but we can't put that out there to let people manipulate that. I mean, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears are going into development of these models, and they've got to stay with our consultant and stay with us, and only have us being the folks that input the data.
Well, it's really surprising. I mean, to any ordinary person would say, well, gosh, why wouldn't you have this kind of thing already? And why did it take so long and blah, blah. But people might not realize Seguasa is a really young, water and sewer authority. Y'all just haven't been around long enough. And certainly you've never had the system as one unified entity, right? One whole thing. So it's part of your modernization, let's say, right? It's just never been around before.
Right. It's, you know, hindsight being what it is, I wish that some of these models were created in the past, but, you know, Seguasa has not existed that long. And a lot of the problems that we have are not, we just found some of the issues. Some of the sewer problems are not, I mean, it's only been a few years since some of that has been known. So, and I also think now just with, you know, a dedicated engineer who, you know, this is the way we think. Engineers think this way. You know, with me here, you have a staff member that's really pushing to get this stuff done and prioritizes this. So I think that's just where we're at. We're just in the growth right now. We're doing a lot of research. We're doing a lot of building, trying to build a foundation with these models, working on that now for the next year or so. And then we really expect to really increase the amount of improvements as soon as we get all these modeling efforts completed. So this is just the first step. And once these are done, I think a lot of infrastructure projects will start to happen.
Yeah, you got that right. I know that there's been lots of people knocking down my door trying to know about what you know. And that's why I know that these models are going to be a huge impact for us, because then, you know, it'll just be about asking a question or two, giving you a chance to crunch the numbers and generate some output. And then you could be telling folks, yes, it's possible. No, it's not possible. You know, it's a real big indicator for any developer to be able to know those answers and understand if it's possible. So up to now, we've been guessing. I'll tell a quick story for those of you that might remember, even before Amberleaf, which Amberleaf was the city's newest subdivision that's recently developed, there was question regarding the pressure available to serve Amberleaf and if there was enough water volume in order to pressurize. And I guess the most important thing is the fire hydrants, right? Maybe not the most important thing, but the idea that the fire hydrants have to meet a certain pressure in order to be useful in the case of an emergency. But there had been a problem with Amberleaf was, you know, they didn't know really if they could get the pressure that was needed, because at the time there was no model. It took the old-fashioned sort of engineering studies to determine it. But from what I remember, that there was a little bit of a, I'm not going to say dispute, but at least a negotiation that happened between the fire marshal's office and Seguasa regarding Amberleaf, and the idea that if all of those hydrants could get the minimum pressure required. And that's part of what the model will be able to tell us now remotely without having to guess as much.
Right. In fire flow data, you have to be able to provide a certain gallons per minute at a certain pressure to adequately fight a fire. So this model is going to help us determine that. So we should be able to look at our system and say, you know, these areas we've got adequate fire flow coverage, and these areas may not have that. So that's, and like you said, Mike, in the past, it's been a little bit of a guess, just with the water, but also the sewer. You know, people ask what the capacity is in a lift station. Right now, I don't have an answer on that. But as we develop the sewer models as well, you know, I'll be able to know. I know exactly how much capacity we have, how much more development can go. So I think we're doing a lot of good work right now. I hope folks see that and can appreciate that. And I think that ultimately it's going to result in a lot of improvement in the service area.
Oh, I have no doubt it's going to be improved. I just wish it would happen yesterday rather than in the future, but you know, that's everybody's wish, right? That's
right. Now, I'm pushing as hard as I can. Don't doubt that for a second. So,
okay. So I'm going to stop there. I see, Jaquacia, you brought up the goals and objectives. Mark, if anybody else has any questions for Mark, please feel free to ask right now, because I told him we'd let him go by 6, and here it is at 6:03. So I want to try to give him a chance to escape gracefully and not have to stay here too much longer. Does anybody else have any questions for Mark? There you go. I think you're free.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. And if anybody has any follow-up questions later, feel free to email or give me a call. I'll be glad to help however I can.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
Mark.
Thank
Mark.
you.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too.
Too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Jaquacia, do you want to take some time? I'm not sure. You want to talk about one of these individually, right?
Yeah, I guess I can just see if I can give people a little chance to look over some of these recommendations. There are, as our group is covering downtown, future land use, and economic development, right? So we just heard a lot from Seguasa, so we can see that we can look toward the future for a couple more development opportunities in and around downtown and on the outer edges of Creedmoor. So some of these recommendations, I can just, I'll start with economic development because we just sort of talked through some of that Seguasa stuff. So working with Seguasa and other municipalities to increase sewer capacity. Yep. Second one is to bring high-speed broadband internet downtown and use that to sort of leverage some more employment centers. Other recommendations, identifying targeted economic locations and the industries for each location. Downtown is like typically is retail, upper story residential. Industrial parks are usually logistics and packing or some sort of manufacturing and assembly. A sub recommendation there is incubator programs. And I guess the city is already doing the economic development consultant with, was it retail strategies?
That's right. That's just where I was going to go to. 3A2, hired economic development consultant. That is retail strategies. Now they are more of a commercial economic development. They are not targeting employee centers or industrial at all. What they're trying to do is look at services, retail, different types of available amenities to people in Creedmoor. So they're not so much pounding the pavement trying to recruit major industry. They're trying to recruit, uses of convenience products and services in town. But I definitely would want to become a little bit more specific on that goal to include retail strategies. And we could give you, Jaquacia, some of their initial results. They've already given me a little bit of a package as far as what they offer and all, and I will surely forward that to you so we can include some of that.
Awesome. And is that mostly like nationwide, regional brands, or does that also include like smaller local?
These guys are more nationwide. What they told me about recently, what they're probably doing even this week, or maybe it was last week, is they went to a national convention of these commercial service providers. And essentially they go with Creedmoor as their client. So they bring Creedmoor to these different potential franchisors or national, developers and say, hey, this is the right place for X. Don't you want to come to Creedmoor? So yeah, we'll, that's where Commissioner Mims was saying that, yeah, they're out there doing the job and we are still eager to hear back from their contacts as far as what they think, I guess is the right way to say it. What they might be saying is Creedmoor too small? Is Creedmoor too remote? Are there not enough houses in Creedmoor? Or are they going to say, wow, I love Creedmoor because it's so close to Durham and Raleigh and I just can't wait to cite my new business there. That's what we're waiting to hear back from them.
So maybe that another opportunity would be focusing on some local small businesses and how we can bring some more of those into downtown. So that could be a different recommendation that's sort of underneath that one.
Yeah, I love the mom and pop shops. And I think anybody who knows me, we do quite a bit of home occupation permitting in Creedmoor. We do have quite a few folks that operate small businesses right out of their homes, out of their garages, out of their, guest bedrooms kind of thing. So I definitely believe that that is a pipeline for us to grow and develop kind of grassroots businesses that, started here and want to stay here. So incubation is mentioned, I think, elsewhere, but it's maybe more about just trying to promote that grassroots mom and pop kind of homegrown business venture.
Okay.
And may I ask a question? This is Ed Mims.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, please.
Mr. Frangos, I'm looking at item 1 on the priorities, and while we're talking pump station and Joe P. Rose, would you mind talking about the necessity for retention ponds or settling ponds, or for any new growth of business, any new business growth downtown Creedmoor?
So for downtown, it enjoys an exemption. New growth and development downtown, a lot of times it's already impervious surface, and it's classified that way. So there would be less of a need for stormwater SCM, stormwater control measures. SCMs are what we call those type of wet ponds, dry ponds, whatever retention might be necessary. So when it comes to downtown, there is a little bit of an advantage because existing impervious does not have to be treated or captured. It's when we do greenfield development downtown, when you take a lot that has nothing but dirt and grass and trees on it, and we make it something else, do we increase the impervious and therefore have to treat it. But this holds true for all development in Creedmoor city limits, ETJ, and even imagine if we go further in the future beyond our ETJ, all of that new development will have to consider every drop of stormwater that falls on it will have to be treated, captured, and nutrients removed. But just to summarize, in downtown, there is an advantage and an exemption given for existing impervious. That gets calculated as part of the site plan review.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to make sure that we know that we're sort of coming up on time, but if you have a question and you don't think we're going to get to it, you can just go ahead and put it in the chat and we can document that and we can answer that later on. It might be an email out later to everyone.
How long do we have, Jaquacia? Just a few minutes? Can we get to these two?
Yeah, we have.
Yes, we can get to these two. I just want to make sure that since we don't have time probably for everyone to speak, that we can still let people know they can give us their feedback.
So Daryl, why don't you go first? I saw your hand up first.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mike, this goes back, and we've had this conversation before, but it goes back to what you were just speaking about, the home-based businesses and on the economic development piece. This is actually specifically, I think y'all just scrolled up on me, but it's related to the economic development number 2, I believe it is. There it is. Yeah. Bringing the high-speed internet to downtown. I continue to be hopeful that we will expand that to citywide, because there are, obviously if the home-based businesses is something that we're looking towards, and then there are a ton of folks like myself that work from home, and high-speed internet is a necessity. I happen to be fortunate in my community, at least, that we have access to it. But I'm hoping, again, that's something that we will consider to look at from a citywide perspective. So that's it for me.
Very good. I remember, sir, one of the things we discussed relates to the high-speed need and how we aren't exactly on North Carolina's broadband highway. Unfortunately, it's 158 that's got the high-speed across the northern side of the county, but we're going to find a way to get ourselves connected here. We need to keep it in our plan, and we need to be forward-thinking when all this broadband starts to blow up. Ernie, you were next.
Yeah, Daryl and I are on the same page. That was one of my comments because I also work from home and have trouble with Time Warner or Spectrum now. The other thing I wanted to ask, I'm fairly new to Creedmoor. I've only been here 4 years or so. but for lack of a better term, the holes in downtown, you know, the places where they're basically parking lots now.
Mhm.
Were there buildings there at one time? We had a fire or something, or has that always been a hole, just a gap in the facade there? What's the history there?
I think they've always been holes. I don't believe we've had a major fire that has taken down downtown. I'm with you. There are spots in between buildings and you'd wonder why, why isn't there any development that's gone on there? But historically, there just hasn't been. And we look at those as opportunities. When we start planning for downtown, it's obvious that we want to fill in those holes, but then you got to make that compromise of the loss of parking. And I
Hey,
think
Mike?
that's always been the struggle.
Mike,
Yes.
this is Daryl.
I-
I hate to correct you on that, sir, but I'll give you two specific examples, two big holes.
Okay,
Joel Panera's parking lot, being one example. That was formerly, if you Google this on the internet, you'll see it. Formerly, Joel Panera's parking lot was the Creedmoor Supply. Back in the day, this was back in the 50s.
where the mules were sold, right?
No, that is not where the mules were sold. Actually, the mules were sold where the First Baptist Academy is. That's where the mule barn was.
Oh, okay.
So that center block building is where they kept all the feed in. But specifically, and I forget the storm, forgive me for not remembering. I'll have to think about it for a few more minutes. But there was a big storm, hurricane that came through, took down the Creedmoor Supply building. Dewar Bowden, I believe, owned it at that time. And so that created that hole there. The other hole that I can speak to specifically is the parking lot between the Mexican restaurant and the environmental business there. That spot was formerly the Red and White grocery store. Shopped there with my mom as a child, and that did catch fire, and that's what created that hole. So those two I can speak to specifically.
Thank you
Okay.
so much for that, Daryl. I was
Yes.
just looking up the Sanborn maps for Granville County to see if I can find anything for Creedmoor. Unfortunately, all I see is Oxford available. So
Mhm.
we might need to look into some more resources for, if not actual maps, then maybe like old photos that might have of downtown, so we can see
Yep.
a little bit more of that historic picture.
Yeah,
But
if you Google
yeah.
Creedmoor Supply, you should find that one online. I've actually done it. I shouldn't say started, but I've done it. Gone from basically CVS all the way on both sides of the street to kind of recall what businesses were in the existing businesses, at least from 1958 when I was born. I remember, and I was able to recreate what was in those businesses during my childhood as to what it looks like today.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
we'll
for
have
that
to-
effort.
We'll definitely
Yeah.
have to look to see if we can get some aerial views.
Oh yeah, it's a good one too. Trying to think of how old the aerials are.
Yeah, there should be something in the archives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just hit me. The Yale Photo Library will give you those pictures of Creedmoor. There are a lot of them actually of STEM as well when they were in their heyday. But the Creedmoor Supply is one of the pictures that I can remember from that photo library.
That's the one where they were displaying the mule in front of the Creedmoor Supply, right?
I believe
there-
so. Yes, yes, sir.
That's the
You're
one
right.
I'm familiar with. Yeah, I think that one's going to end up being in the report itself. It was one of those early photos that we gave you in our cache, and got it out.
Awesome.
Mike,
But yeah, filling in the gaps of the building frontage is definitely something that we noted and as an early recommendation for downtown. A lot of those parking lots that are in front of businesses, and then there's the car lot that's on the other side of town hall. When you're walking through a downtown, those large gaps just sort of make it uncomfortable to keep walking. And make you kind of want to like turn around and go back to where like there's more civilization, there's more eyes on the street, there's more things that are happening. The storefronts are what make you really want to keep going through the town.
I can't
Yes.
remember. I forgot to use that as an example. The lot and it's more on the Main Street side, but the lot at the corner of, that would be Sanderford Main Street and even Lion Street, that is where Mr. Belvin's Esso station was. His son Tommy was a Creedmoor City policeman. He still lives in the community, but that was the Esso station. I started buying gas there. It was 25 cents a gallon. I'll never forget.
Thank you. Ernie, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one more. Those holes that we're talking about, are any of them city owned or they're all private?
They are all private. Most of them are, I know. No, I don't think the city owns any right on Main Street.
Okay.
There are some opportunities where we talked about partnering with some of those property owners. One of the things ARPA brings up is handicap accessibility. And I know a big DE&I push is access and making sure that handicapped folks get equal and easy opportunity to get up and down Main Street. And one of the things right in front of Creedmoor Drug on the map that's being put in now, we all know about that little change in elevation in our sidewalks. And that unfortunately is just a reality of Main Street that I don't think we're ever going to change. I could read back on maps and plans, decades that have called that out, but that's one of the only problems. And then, so the south of Campbell Orthodontics is the one that Darrell referred to as Joel's parking lot, right? Kind of where the mouse is now is where the Creedmoor Supply used to be. But that parking lot used to be a building. And then the other one, the Mexican restaurant, is a little bit further north, Jaquatia, is a little bit, Creedmoor Drug. Those are both privately owned. Those are both Mayor Wheeler's lots and land that they own. And that one, right, El Corral, between Edge and El Corral is where Darrell's saying the red and white was. And again, looks like parking has taken over those vacant opportunities there. And that one was recently paved. One of our steering board members, John Zabonic, is responsible for that pavement because I think he owns all that land now.
Yep.
So, Mike, not to, I don't want to get off the topic of accessibility, but I do want to bring up that the utility poles on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Are you able to get around them if you're in a wheelchair? Or?
There are a
in
couple
every-
spots where it's in the middle of the sidewalk. I noted that when I was walking down it.
That's what I
There are a couple. We have had sidewalk accessibility done, an ADA accessibility survey, let's call it. And I think in every area, there is indeed 36 inches of clearance. But I know what you're talking about is that some places, those utility poles do provide a little bit of an obstacle to get around and a challenge. There are places where the ramps had to be amended so that, that we didn't move the pole. Just to give everybody an idea, moving a pole starts at $15,000. And then that doesn't include moving either of the three utilities that are usually on it, electric and telephone and cable. And then each of those has an expense that goes along with relocating that pole. So it is a huge, huge challenge. And I know that because we had to do three or four, I think three, as part of our Cross City Trail project. I know just how challenging they were. And it took us over a year to get one particular pole moved from one utility provider that didn't want to do what we had to do. And honestly, we got no power or control over them. But eventually they did it. It took them a full year, though. It is a pricey endeavor. And I don't know if ever in downtown, unless, I don't know what it will take to ever get those utilities relocated downtown. I would love to see it, and I know everybody in this group probably would. But boy, oh boy, there's going to have to be some grants on top of grants on top of grants to make that happen.
Yeah. I'm getting calls to pull us out and pull us back into the main group. So
All right.
So again, if you have any other questions and comments that you want to express, please put it in the chat either here or in the main chat, and that way we can have it on record and we can go back and look up some of these thoughts and answers that could relate to your comments. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close this out. So stay
Thank you.
on. Nope.
Yes.
Yep.
Stay on. We're
Stay-
going to get back together as a group.
Yep. And you can just hit the close